50 के आसपास ही रखते हैं अपने लिमिट की, 50 किताबें लगभग छापनी है। तो हम लोग ये नियम अपना की, और है इसके अलावा हम लोगों ने ये भी रखा है कि उस गुणवत्ता कि सिर्फ हम बाहर से किसी से नहीं, हम लोग फाइनल प्रूफ जो है, जो जिस विषय के एक्सपर्ट हैं वो एकदम हर हाल में पढ़ेंगे ही, पूरा फाइनल जो है उसको देख करके। तब ये नहीं कि शुरू में हमने पांडुलिपि पढ़ ली, उसको हम जो देख लिया प्रूफ रीडर, उस पर नहीं, फाइनल हम लोग खुद पढ़ेंगे तभी छापेंगे। चलिए, तो हम लोग कुछ ज़्यादा समय ले लिया लगता है। अच्छा, नहीं, और कोई सवाल हो तो
मैं पूछूंगी, लेकिन एक मिनट मैं इनका एक अनुवाद कर दूं जब इट्स स्टिल फ्रेश इन माय माइंड। मैथिली स्क्रिप्ट।
तिरहुता लिपि, मिथिलाक्षर दोनों नाम चलता है, तिरहुता लिपि या मिथिलाक्षर जो है, इस लिपि में ये मैथिली में ज़्यादातर चीज़ें पहले छपती रही, लेकिन इधर आकर पिछले लगभग 50 वर्ष से जो है मुख्य रूप से ज़्यादा ये नागरी लिपि को जो है भी प्रचलन में ले आया गया है। और हम लोग जो है कुछ खास करके अंतिका प्रकाशन जो है हम लोग नागरी लिपि में ही छापते हैं। मैं जानता हूँ ये जो है, जो मिथिलाक्षर है तिरुता लिपि, वो लगभग बंगाली, जो बांग्ला की जो लिपि है वो दोनों लगभग आस पास है, ज़्यादातर लगभग 80% साम्य है, और ये बहुत पुरानी लिपि है। लेकिन क्या हुआ कि प्रचलन हिंदी का वही दबाव जो है, हिंदी का वर्चस्व इस तरह हुआ कि ज़्यादातर लोग हिंदी भाषी हो गए। खुद मैं मैथिली बचपन से, हमारी भाषा में हिंदी जो है लगभग जो है 12-14 वर्ष तक हिंदी नहीं मैं बोल पाता था। लेकिन स्थिति है कि मैथिली का मैं कुछ पढ़ा नहीं था। मैं जब ग्रेजुएशन करने तक जो है मैंने मैथिली का एक पन्ना नहीं पढ़ा था। यही स्थिति थी कि मैथिली उसके बाद, और जब उसके बाद पढ़ा तो फिर हमने लोगों ज़्यादा, और लेखन भी पहले मैंने हिंदी में शुरू किया, लेकिन जो बहुत जल्दी जो तुरंत फिर मैथिली में भी हमने शुरू किया अपना जो है उधर जो है। लेकिन वो लिपि का जो है वही कि हम लोग कट गए, इस तरह की एक बड़ी संख्या आने लगी कि आज भी लगभग जो है जो पुराने लेखक लोग जो 60 पार के हैं वो सब जो है मिथिलाक्षर दोनों लिपि जानते हैं। मिथिलाक्षर वो में लिखते हैं, 60 पार के लगभग जो है 99% लेखक मिथिलाक्षर जानते हैं। हम लोगों की उम्र में भी लगभग जो है 50% जानते हैं। मैं जैसे पढ़ लेता हूँ, लिख नहीं पाता हूँ। मेरा भी है कि मिथिलाक्षर में पढ़ता हूँ लेकिन लिख नहीं पाता हूँ, लिखने में वो गति नहीं है वैसी, अब बहुत मुश्किल से लिखूँ अलग बात है। तो लिपि का ये हमारे यहाँ थोड़ा सा जो है अब जो है इसमें जानतांत्रिक हो गया है कि दोनों लिपि चल सकता है, कोई इसका विरोध अब नहीं है। कुछ समय पहले तक जो है लगभग 20-25 वर्ष पहले तक बड़ा विरोध होता था कि नागरी लिपि की हिंदी, आज भी जो है लगभग 1-2% ऐसे लोग जो हैं कुछ, अब वो दक्षिणपंथी कुछ तरह के लोग जो हैं वो इसका बात का विरोध करते हैं। 1-2% बहुत छोटा सा प्रतिशत है, वो लोग हिंदी नहीं पढ़ते हैं, वो अंग्रेजी, वो मैथिली के बाद वो अंग्रेजी बोल सकते हैं, अंग्रेजी में लिख सकते हैं, वो हिंदी बोलते तक नहीं है। कुछ ऐसे बुजुर्ग आपको 70-80 साल के मिल जाएंगे जो है मैथिली में भी, को इस तरह से, क्योंकि वो हिंदी का जो उस पर दबाव रहा है उससे वो लोग ज़्यादा भुगत चुके हैं। अब हम लोग चूँकि दोनों तरह के, थोड़ा सा ये हम लोगों के, अब इसको कमी कहें या जो कहें, ये हो रहा है कि हम लोग जो है उससे दूर गए हैं। ऐसी एक बड़ी पीढ़ी जो है उस लिपि से कट रही है।
We'll have more time for questions, hopefully, but he's going to go away. That's why I've allowed that also to happen. However, later, Mamta, please, sorry. Quickly to translate, he told us a lot actually, so I'm going to do my best in translating what he's told us. Sorry. First, I need to apologize to you, sir, for calling you Mr. Desraj, which was my mistake. I think earlier I referred to you, instead of saying Gaurinath ji, मैंने Desraj ji कहा आपको. My apologies for that. That's really kind. तो कितना आपका एवरेज प्राइसिंग है?
एवरेज हमारा उसमें 50 पैसे से लेकर 50 से 100 के नीचे ही रहता है।
Okay, so under ₹100. Hindi to Maithili readers. Again, Hindi has a dominant position among Maithili readers as well. I'm looking to you just to say that Hindi is so dominant. Author called Hari Mohan Jha, and that same book, how many Maithili readers want to read in Maithili. So it goes even if you go to Darbhanga, Patna, etc. There are a lot of these pirated books that are selling. Again, when he looks at sorry, I'm just referring to my notes written in real time.
Now, if you have a non-Unicode language, as you mentioned Tamil, how would you ingest that Tamil language in those front ends? So that means, you would have to recreate the entire value chain.
Tamil is not a non-Unicode language. No, we are all using both Unicode and non-Unicode content, not just in Tamil, every Indian language. We are forced by the software that we have. If there is a software that will not accept Unicode, it's not my decision. The other thing is something that is close to his heart. The Unicode fonts that are available in the computers that we see are horribly designed, atrociously cut. That's a font face that I want to just throw out of my computer. I can't. I get a choice of one. Right? I live with it. Horribly designed fonts. Because it is designed perhaps in US by people who probably don't know how that particular font should be. But anyway, we work with both, just like, we are bilingual or trilingual or quadrilingual. I talk to you in English and I talk to somebody else in Tamil. I work with both non-Unicode font and Unicode simultaneously, and that's why we develop additional tools, waste a lot of money, time, and keep translating one to the other as the case may be. So we are doing that. We are today doing that. So we are quite comfortable with that, unfortunately. So we are not fighting that we want everything to work in one single system, but maybe it will happen over time.
So Badri, how does this work? If you say that this particular keyboard is the standard and it's been mandated, but then globally, Tamil is a global language in the sense that there are people outside India also who speak to that. So how does that work? What is mandated by the Tamil Nadu government then doesn't get used by any other government? What's the reusability?
See, the output is reusable. The output is Unicode. The keyboard, for example, in Tamil Nadu, at least what is promoted by the Tamil Nadu government, is called Tamil 99. It was developed during one of the Tamil internet conferences. Still, the only state and language that is organizing a yearly Tamil internet conference where this was developed. Sri Lanka has a totally different keyboard for Tamil. But what they are trying to make it a national standard. And the output, however, fortunately is still Unicode. With small variations anyway, the regional variations are captured in the currency that you use, in the certain other special characters, etc. But the large scale, every akshara is the same across. The same thing in Singapore and Malaysia. So the Tamil output is compatible. What kind of keystrokes they use to produce that output does vary and will always remain different, because these are different countries we are talking about.
I feel a little bit like Arnab Goswami.
I think this, whenever, whatever keyboard Inscript was designed, that was old dated, so I don't know the history. So Inscript was enforced as a national standard in 1988 or 1991. So now we have upgraded that, because any standard you bring out, you have the responsibility of upgrading it from time to time. So that standard is in BIS in the last phases. So all the Unicode characters which were missing on the Inscript standard have been added. So we are maintaining the Inscript standard as the national standard, but as Mr. Badri already explained, there is a flexibility on using the keyboard. One can use phonetic keyboard, one can use Tamil 19, and variations can be used. Wherein, if the storage, as long as you are mapping it properly to Unicode, it doesn't matter. So that flexibility in technology is there, and all of us can enjoy that. But Unicode storage cannot be sacrificed, because that makes the whole thing interoperable. And with respect to fonts, we have developed quite a good number of fonts. So that is where I said, state governments are not engaging. I'm not talking of any few state governments who are active, but state governments by and large are not engaging. And state governments cannot understand the needs of the industry also. So that is why we are saying the industry should engage, the users should engage, so that we can find solutions. TDL program has been here since 1991 and has worked a lot. But state governments, whenever we write to them, they don't give us feedback. Even industry doesn't give us feedback. Even users don't give us feedback. But we are working alone, standing in the market. So we want others to come and engage and tell us whether we are doing right, wrong. Please join in the game. So that's the line which I want to emphasize on.
Sure, yeah.
Is it possible to have multiple Indian language fonts on the same
Yeah. So yeah, there are keyboards there. You can switch between English and Hindi, etc. Is that what you are?
Yeah, but also Hindi, Bengali, Tamil.
Are they?
Yes, yes, you can. If you have your iPad, for example, as one of the modern devices, iPad with iOS 7.0 and Android 4.x, you can have multiple character inputs. You can just keep switching, and
But mine is only Hindi.
well, you can add more, the whole host of 20, 30, 40, 50 key inputs available. Same thing in Windows, Macintosh, all of that you can do that. That's the advantage of Unicode document, where you can have even within the document multiple fonts, multiple language lipis, and also using being a soft keyboard, you can do all these things easily. It's possible.
Any other questions?
Current statistics, if we have any statistics about the type of e-book being published, especially what is the percentage of e-publishing in terms of
Would you be able to take that?
is there some kind of analysis?
I don't think there is a mark. I don't think, I think Nielsen is trying to do something, but I don't think there is an industry that has captured that data. From selling ebooks, we've been in this market only for 9 months. I think Flight, Wink, and a few others have been there a little earlier, but I'm not sure to what success. Amazon is coming in, so I think you should give it at least a few more years to get some data out. But I mean, it's one thing that I want to mention here that Vishal mentioned some time back is I think that the bigger problem here that we need to address is why how excited are publishers to capture this market from a regional publishing point of view. I think Satya and I were having a conversation some time back outside. I think there are some serious challenges here because the regional publishers or some the tier 2 or tier 3 publishers, I'm just talking from a turnover point of view, not from the quality of content that they produce, are very small. They are proprietary companies where the owner have to sit and edit. He looks after sales, he looks after distribution, maybe he runs his own retail outlet, and he does not have the bandwidth he does not have resources that's required to kind of get onto a digital platform. There is a lot of challenges, not just from conversion, but even after an ebook is converted, metadata issues, ensuring how pricing is fixed for all these markets. How do you want to go about marketing, discovery? Do you want to spend money on discovery? So there are a lot of other challenges. It's exactly like a physical book, right? Once you put a physical book, then you'll have to ensure the book gets enough visibility in the retail space. But the real challenge, I think, the real challenge is resources, and there is an initial financial commitment when it comes to conversion itself. All the panelists here have kind of mentioned what all is required to ensure that output is right, but who's going to spend for it? The biggest question is who's going to spend for it, but I think the answer is collaboration. Venki will answer. I think Google is also trying to do a lot of things to figure out how we can get more users online, right? So that's a separate project that we have, but the way to go about it is collaboration, right? Let's say your Tamil industry in itself. I mean, I met the Tamil publishing, the Bapasi last week. The moment you say you'll have to do it, even between themselves, they're like, why should I do? Why should you do? You try it first and then I'll try it first, So it's nice to see that somebody's trying to do something, but it's so competitive that nobody's coming together to do something about it. And like Satya mentioned, they want to see money, right? They want to see money to say, okay, I will make this much money out of it. But you didn't, not as in you, but anybody, you won't sell physical books unless until you printed it. So there is some kind of commitment financial commitment you did by publishing that book, right? So if you want to, if as a publisher one has to make some money out of it, there has to be some commitment upfront. And there is no way, you should not be shy about it. There is some commitment, but the question is, I think we'll have to collaborate as a group. Maybe if you guys can do it for Tamil industry, great. I mean, it has to be an aggregator, or what is it? I mean, that's the biggest challenge.
I just want to add to that. Ebooks, as you said, we have very little data because Amazon India came to India just about 6 months ago. So I think we'll need another 6 months to 1 year to get exact data. But ebook, across in the US, about 30 to 35% of a company's revenue turnover is from ebooks. In the UK, it's around 17 to 18%. In India, it's still less than 1%. So maybe in another year, at least the major publishers are trying to make ebook sales, say 1 to 2% of the revenue. So,
We started only 10 years back, so all our content is already in some kind of a digital format. Third, we have built our own tool to build ebooks. I mean, to build ebook that we will get EPUB 2.0.1 now or 3.0. We are sitting there taking our books and converting them into EPUBs. EPUB is what we are using.
Share resources. So it's important. It's good to say that Google and Amazon and others should help when you yourself are not willing to help yourself. I mean, if you are in that state of mind, it becomes very difficult for anyone to come and help you.
That's the reality.
No, I completely get it. No, where I think each state can or each regional publisher can help himself is company like you, where you understand the opportunity, you understand which state the publishers are in. I mean, Google, I'm sure, or Amazon or Apple will definitely be interested in working with you to figure out how we can help you. I mean, at least from a Google point of view, I can tell you there are so many initiatives that are going on, or at least we are really trying to figure out how we can get the next millions of users online. Let it be, it doesn't matter, it's English or Hindi or Tamil. As long as there are more users, it's a better ecosystem, and it's much healthier.
So, I have a question to the publishers, and I come from a very ferociously organized industry, which is the IT industry, and we have a body called NASSCOM which represents the industry. So the question to the publishers is, why are you so disorganized? There's so many issues which are so much in your deep self-interest, the basic issue of a font. I mean, without a basic thing like a font, how can you really kind of, have great communication in your language? And you still do not have, 10 years down the line, I'm still hearing, font is an issue. I mean, so why are people not sorting it out?
I can answer that.
No, I want to first answer because this is an ongoing thing. Sorry, and you can see that.
My answer will be same as
Venki, let me also say that of course you had a Devang Mehta who set up NASSCOM for you, and you had a government that kind of went out of the way to give you land and give you SOPs and give you everything. Publishing is not even considered an industry to begin with. It doesn't come under the National Industrial Classification, the NIC. It's sort of earlier it was put under printing, so chemicals and something, and today it is under information. And it's not even treated as an industry. No credit from banks, no credit in the supply chain. I mean, the publishers give the credit, it comes after 90 days. That is the term. More.
900 days.
That's what I say. 90 days was the norm, and now it's just dragging, and people now don't even want to take your books. They say, if you don't give on consignment, you won't. So there are all these problems. I'm not justifying anything. Of course, we need to organize ourselves. But I'm just saying the realities of how publishing has sort of survived. It's really survived despite everything. It's not survived because of anything. And today, if you ask, there are so many federations, and all they are doing is sort of protecting self-interest of very small groups, and they are the ones recognized by the government. So even if today we create an organization, we can't get anything done because those are the guys who are recognized. I'm not against them. I'm just saying that is the reality. FIP and all the other federations, they have their own sort of pockets of operation. And even if we create a federation, we have to campaign to even get the recognition that we are a separate federation. Please give us, give us these funds or whatever. So all these things are happening. There's a lot of Delhi-centricness to things, and in the process, a lot of us get forgotten that the rest of the country exists. So these things happen. Sir, do you want to add something more to?
Yeah, that's the logistic part you said. I'm actually coming from the investment point. I work for a company called Red Elsevier. We do invest a lot on our e-publications and a lot of energy. The first 100 days in what is the final stage of this evolution. Technology is changing every day. We have invested first on OCR technology, then we went for XML, we are going for EPUB 2, EPUB 1, EPUB 2, and now it's again EPUB 3. How many times should a publisher invest? It doesn't come cheap. That's the basic question. When would this technology stabilize? We're just waiting. We've got lot of content.
It will never stabilize.
Never stabilize. So how many times should a publisher invest?
Every time.
It's a conversion cost nowadays. We are not even recovering the conversion cost.
Specifically, we have us experimenting with Android and iOS platforms. A huge problem with the Android platform that every new version keeps coming out, and the previous version, the app that we have created is broken, and you are talking about 1 month and 2 months we have to keep touching the application. So I hope you can tell your guys, please don't do this. Do it at least once a year and not more than that.
Once in 5 years.
Once a year.
Election happens once in 5 years.
That should be regulated.
I think we'll take the last question then, Satya.
I think there are 3 players in this space or conversation as you see it. There is the government, which is represented here by TDIL, and then the Department of IT and so on. And then there are the technology companies like Google, who are in distribution, and like Vishal, who is in the conversion and so on. And then there are publishers like HarperCollins or NHM. Now, there is a coordination failure of sorts between all these 3. Everybody is talking about, see, I have this technology capability and I am developing this. Others must use it. Okay, it's up to them. They must get involved, they must engage, and they must use it. I am developing something which I think is good. I don't know what they want, but I think this is good. And then the technology companies say, I have this great platform, it's worldwide, it's doing so well everywhere else. Everybody must come and sell on my platform, because that's the way they will make money, when nobody is really interested in selling anything. So because I have a platform, I want somebody to use it. And I can provide conversion services because I am doing it for thousands of companies, and I've done millions of books and so on. So everybody should come to me and we'll all convert everything. But then you start converting, then you realize OCR doesn't work, and then the encodings are all screwed up and all of that. So now somebody has to come in between and address this coordination failure, so that we can provide a mechanism for everybody to understand the other person's perspective, till the publishers understand the technologist's perspective and the distributor's perspective, or till the technologists understand what the publishers really want or thinking. Today, there is no case at all for a publisher to convert everything into digital, because as I said, there is no money out there yet. Somebody first must show that there is a lot of money being made, and then they will all come. There is no doubt about that. But nobody is making money today, and as Shiva said, it's too early days to even talk about data, numbers, to what's selling and how much of money is being made and all of that. So till such time as some numbers come out and people feel that others are making money, that's not going to work. And there's another important aspect here which the technologists don't seem to think much about, which is that publishers are not people who use tablets or who go and buy on Google or Flipkart or Amazon.
Hey, that's changing.
Language publishers. Okay? English publishers are different. They are completely different.
Language publishers are restricted to PDFs.
So when a publisher does not read anything on a tablet, how is he going to believe that there are hordes of people out there who are going to read on tablets? When the publisher does not ever buy anything on Amazon or Google or Flipkart, how is he going to believe that there are millions of people who are going to buy that? Till the publisher sees, maybe people in his own family or larger circle of acquaintances doing all this on a daily basis, that's not going to happen. So you should actually be going and trying to evangelize those things first, rather than saying, I have this solution, I have this technology, please use it, it can get you a lot of money, when that's not going to happen in the near term.
And I think added to that, sorry, just to bring in a quick point, is also that when the earliest of technology products are being shown to publishers, the contracts and the language that they come in, it is so confusing, and this was something that even Arpita was talking about at a RIGHT seminar 2 days ago, that you have this whole terminology which is so different in the Americanized contracts, which we understand very differently, like a licensee or a rights holder or whatever. These are very sort of specific terms to our industry. And when the first e-publishing contract had come to me, I remember I had to spend so much time trying to understand each word, so that we were not going to be in trouble later. And for many publishers, that just becomes a complete impediment. We don't know what you're telling us, what will we lose out, what will go out of our hands. And this is also something that comes in the way.
As a matter of fact, I think Kobo is the only company that's done a contract guide. So when they send you the contract, they send you a contract guide with it. So that you can decide. It makes sense. It really helps. It really helps.
You know, the gentleman has, I don't know your name, but you raised a very important point. What can be a platform which can, put technology and publishing together? And I'm office bearer at NASSCOM, and I'll be very happy to discuss that with you as to how we can make that happen in terms of a communication platform, so that technology and publishing can come, and talk at the same level. We'd love to do that, with you.
Typical example, Tamil, in Singapore is different than Tamil spoken, in India. So, in the sense there's a slight variation. So now just imagine, customizing the technology, which is done by somebody like Google or Abby, and then putting that in the workflow, and then reusing it to create thousands and millions of pages. So it requires economy, it requires money to do the same. I cannot do it for few hundred pages. So if I have million pages, I can surely customize it and then give that solution to the association or group of publisher, but not to one. That's, I guess, is the major roadblock. And I guess if you want to add something.
I think the point that I first made about scale is achieved online easier, right? So going back to scale, if as a group, I completely get Satya's point when he said that we should understand where a publisher is coming from. We definitely try to do that, but again, it's in vain. I don't think we've figured it out, right? So rightly said. But if the publishers as a group can come together, each language 20 or 30, each pooling in 100 books and then going to a conversion or coming to us, I mean that's what you were saying, right? If they can come to you, say that, then that's when you get scale. So I think, again, going back to the point, I think collaboration is key. It's very important for publishers to work together. I think that's why publishing associations are there. But again, I think the point is, what are these publishing associations? I mean, I don't want to be like that, but no, definitely they are trying to do a lot. But if there is an opportunity, like you said, if the point that you said about show us the money, show us the content to show us the money, I think it's a debate, it's a cycle that will keep going on. We'll have to bridge the gap by coming together. And to the point the gentleman raised about how many versions we'll have to build, I think as a digital or a technology company, we keep listening to the user. The more the user says this is not working, that's not working, or in this feature I want this, we will have to listen to them. The first point I made about user proximity, I think digital companies or technology companies are much more closer to the user because they've been evolving so much in terms of platform, in terms of innovation that they're trying to bring out is because they are listening to the user. The user says fix it, or I'm going to move platform. We don't have a choice but to fix it. Right?
Again, among all CVV platform providers, there's no standardization. If as a publisher, if I want to go to a CVV platform, then for Amazon I have to create a different version. For Google I have to create a different version. And for iOS I have to do different, Android I have to do different version.
Either it's EPUB or Mobi. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's a different
EPUB like we invested a lot on EPUB 1, now it's coming EPUB 3.
Request, sorry to interrupt, we can carry this conversation at tea. The ministry, someone has to come and do something here at 4:30 sharp, and I'm so sorry.
Okay. Just one quick comment. NASSCOM, we have made them aware about these issues, but they haven't really come forward to work on Indian language issues so far. And when it comes to this interdisciplinary area, if you send a letter to state IT department, they say, I'm not concerned. If you send it to language one, he says, I don't know the technology. So this is the barrier which TDIL has been trying to bridge. Thanks.
With that, I'd like to thank all the panelists and thank you for a very interesting discussion, and I'm sure the controversy will go on.
And we hope we will be able to discuss this topic and throw some light on the issues. I also see that in the audience there are many people who are self-publishing or who have considered that option. So we will start on this. I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Leonard Fernandez. Besides being a co-founder of this Publishing Next, in 2006 we also co-founded what is called Cinnamon Teal Publishing, which was primarily a self-publishing services. Since then we have moved to other things like we provide publishing services, but we also provide ebook services and other things like that. I have with me Kanishka Gupta, who is the owner of Writer's Side, which is basically a literary agency. Manish Purohit, who has recently co-founded Authors Upfront, a self-publishing service. Shailesh Bharatwasi, who is a founder of Hindiyug, which provides self-publishing for Hindi authors. Right? I have Vivek Mehra, who many people might find interesting to find on this panel. He's CEO of Sage, but recently I got an email from him saying that he was self-publishing his book. So I thought he already has. So I thought he might be a good person to have on this panel and tell us a little bit about what made that happen. And I have S. Sitaraman, who first self-published his book, and then that same book was then taken up by Westland. So here's an author who's transitioned from self-publishing to publishing when often it is the other way around. So let me start with Kanishka. He will tell us his experiences as a literary agent, and also I think he will tell us why self-publishing doesn't work.
I would like to start by clearing a few misconceptions surrounding Writer's Side, which I founded in 2008. As you know, in UK and the US, agents cannot double up as editorial service providers because it's considered a conflict of interest. However, because of the low print runs and low print runs, it's very difficult for agents to survive in India without having any ancillary services. So this is how I started. So what I did was, at Writer's Side, we discourage self-publishing, as in all manuscripts that are submitted to us are first evaluated with a view to representation to mainstream publishers. But if a manuscript is rejected, instead of just sending a boilerplate rejection and telling them good luck with some other agent or publisher, we give them the option to get their manuscript critiqued or assessed for a fee, with the condition that no matter how well the rework is done, we will not represent the manuscript, and the author will still have to go to another agent or a publisher. So this is a slightly controversial aspect of Writer's Side, but I think it works in the Indian environment where it's very difficult to work as a full-time agent. I would also like to talk about the kind of authors who query me. So they can be classified into 4 or 5 categories. The first are the most irritating lot, because they've read too much into Amish Tripathi, Durjoy Datta and Ravinder Singh's success stories, and they are just looking at publication as an exit to glory. So no matter how much interest you show in their work, it's very difficult to match their expectations. The second kind of author have a slightly romantic notion about writing. They'll tell you that they've quit their high-paying jobs and they are on a long sabbatical from work, and they are working on this manuscript for the last 5 years. So unwittingly, they end up putting a lot of pressure on you, because they kind of give the sense to the agent as if their life depended on the publication of the book. So these kind of authors are primarily looking at publication, and they are not concerned too much about the advances or a mainstream publisher or a smaller publisher. The third kind are people who are well known in their respective fields. Now these are people who treat publishing as just another aspect of their job, because they are looking at brand extension. And these are people, they are looking it as a brand extension, and these are people who are basically treating it as any other aspect of their job. The fourth kind of writers who query me are well-known authors, or authors who've had a raw deal with publishers, and it's completely different dealing with them. It's good in the sense that they already know a lot of publishers, and they are on good terms with some editors, and it's bad because they've had a fallout with some editors. So I think in my 6 years as a literary agent and a consultant, I've never had a query from a publisher, from an author who's looking at self-publishing without going through mainstream routes. So I think it's very difficult for self-publishing to work. I also feel the main problem with self-publishing is that an author wants to take control of all aspects of self-publishing, be it editing, cover design, formatting, and this leads to a very poor quality product. In my conversation with some distributors, I came to realize that it's very difficult for even mainstream publishers to get into bookstores, get their books into bookstores, let alone self-published authors. A problem with self-published authors is that distributors don't like to open individual accounts because then the logistics of shipping and invoicing becomes very difficult. So a publisher who is supplying 100 copies, 100 books to a distributor, they'll have only one account for that publisher. And for individual authors, they find it highly unfeasible to have separate individual accounts. So the books won't be available in any bookstores. The only advantage a self-published author has over traditional authors in terms of distribution is that they can get into bookstores offering very high discounts to the distributor. So that's one way to get into bookstores.
About it being difficult to get into bookstores, but to tell an author that you can't edit, maybe not edit, but to tell an author that because you can't design your cover, to tell an author in the first place that you can't design your cover is not done, meaning he won't take it lightly. But there's a kind of arrogance here saying that the publisher can design the cover and edit the book better than another set of people. So whether it's the author who can design his own cover or the author's friend, or not a friend, but somebody whom the author can hire to get the book edited. To tell the author that this is something that only the publisher can do and no one else is a bit of an arrogant statement, don't you think?
Published authors are taking control of all aspects of publishing, and this is where the role of self-publishing companies comes into play, where we have self-publishing companies providing different packages to authors, covering different aspects. But from what I gather and from my experience, it's in today's market, it's anyways very difficult to sell books to publishers because of shrinking retail space and different media platforms coming up and book sales coming down. But what happens is that if a self-published author, in my experience, a lot of self-published authors have approached me 2 or 3 months after self-publishing, and then they want a mainstream publisher for that same self-published book. Now, there is this sort of old quality about that book, and it's already available on Flipkart. There are a couple of reviews on Flipkart. Some aggressive PR agency must have managed a couple of reviews in newspapers. So why would a mainstream publisher want to take up that book just 2 months after it was self-published? And I think self-publishing works in some cases. For instance, no matter how good a book is, there are certain kinds of books that have to be self-published because publishers have to publish a certain number of copies to break even or make profits. And I get queries for all sorts of books that are interesting but will not appeal to a mainstream audience, like authors writing memoirs of their grandparents and of their forefathers, and then some recipe book on the Rayalaseema district. I don't think many people even know where Rayalaseema is, so why would anyone want to read about a cookbook on the Rayalaseema district? So that's, I think self-publishing works there. Another alarming problem with mainstream publishing is the kind of time they are taking to bring out books. I mean, earlier we used to have publishing clauses wherein the publisher promised the publication of a book 12 months after it was delivered. Now some publishing houses have changed the clause to 15 months. There is a major publishing house that has changed the clause to 24 months, which is really, really disappointing. What happens is that a lot of editors at the time of taking up a manuscript, because of high attrition in publishing and general dissatisfaction in the industry, they're leaving their jobs. So when it comes to taking up the book for editing, it's like an orphan sitting in the.
Sorry, I'll have to interrupt you here because we're running out of time already. But I'll just ask Vivek to jump in because he's self-published his book now, and I want to ask you if you subscribe to this theory that says that one should not even self-publish, right? Because that puts you in a very constrained environment.
I don't think mine's a perfect example of self-publishing, but let's put a few things into perspective. So you have a publisher on the panel, so might as well take the space. Self-publish, and whatever we are talking about today, or the romantic side of it, is got to do with fiction. So that's the first space it occupies. Non-fiction, serious non-fiction has some traction. Anything beyond these two genres, there's very little traction. You can't even think about publishing a really academic kind of a book and then hoping that it'll go someplace. That's not the way the market actually functions. So the very simplest way of identifying whether you should self-publish or not is whether you are a B2C kind of a book, or you are going to a library, or you're going to a researcher, because the end user is what should be driving your decision to publish. Now, whatever else has been said about self-publishing and the good part and the bad part, here are a few truths that I've learned. You can be a great author, you can't edit your book. There's a fundamental conflict of interest in your mind. You tend to read what isn't there. That's because you're so close to the subject. You see, words just you will skip words, your reader won't. So that's one problem. Book covers, as a publisher, I get lots of grief from authors saying, I want my book cover like this, I want my book cover like that. And I have only one argument for that. I say, you can design any cover you want as long as it sells the book. I don't have a stated position on it as a publisher. You want a book cover, you tell me that it'll sell the book, or it works for the book. You come up with something that your grandchild did and you say, that's the book cover that I would like on my book, it's my book. Well, I turn on and say, it's my investment. It's not yours. So in self-publishing, it's your investment. Put whatever cover you want to, and if you believe that cover will sell your book, be happy with it. If you feel that you've done a fantastic job editing it, then be happy with it. So there is a gratification in self-publishing. For me, I was another kind of an author that you've not encountered, which is who's publishing for the sake of publishing it. I'm neither making a career out of it. On my little blurb on Kindle, I put it up on Kindle, I said, people love showcasing their successes, I'm showcasing my biggest failure. So I got my first foray into publishing was I became a writer because I thought I could do that. And I found out the hard way that I couldn't. And I went all over, scrounged and went all the way to London and to meet an agent, and he didn't allow me a step in the doorway. Today I can walk into any door that I'd like to, and I choose not to. Now it's my experiment of saying, actually, does self-publishing work? So for me, the key takeaway is just one. How will the end consumer consume your content? That's the only decision that you should be looking at. In fiction, it's easy. In anything that's outside of fiction or serious non-fiction, I don't think the consumption of that content is in the current models of self-publishing. I hope that helps.
Thank you. I'll turn my attention to Manish. Manish was, till a few months back, fully immersed in what we call as traditional publishing, and now he has co-founded a self-publishing house. Manish, give us a perspective of self-publishing in India. What's the space? Why are publishing houses like yours, we've seen at least one or two every year, what are they looking for and what kind of space are they trying to fill?
I think it's very important for us to understand where self-publishing comes from. I think it has changed the entire publishing space has changed in the last 3 to 4 years. And self-publishing actually has originated from the entire democracy of expression that has followed the internet. And that's where somewhere the authors wanted more control. They also wanted more control of their expression in their own forms, in their own language, in the way they want to say it. Also, traditional publishers missed a few points to a large extent that, they did not understand what the consumer want. There was also this challenge of distribution, which is now equal to a publisher or to a published or non-published author. So everyone is, sure.
The usual argument was that the publishers know better, right? And now you're saying something else now. You're saying that the author knows better and the author has a better view of that.
I think what I'm trying to say, Leonard, is that some of the publishers did miss certain points. And, that's where authors were not finding that their expressions were reaching customers. And they wanted to reach the customers on their own. Some of them, rather many of them, succeeded in India as well as outside of India. And there's nothing wrong with it. So self-publishing is another form of publishing where the control probably rests more with the author. It does not change the way a book comes out. There is still the importance of editorial. There is still importance of ensuring good quality. There is still importance of having a great cover. There is still importance of promotion. It's just that the dynamic of those business, dynamic of that cycle has changed. Okay. Also, authors would like to have control over their work. So what's wrong in it? Can they produce a better cover? Yes, I think it's debatable, but the debate should happen. I mean, publishers cannot insist that it's their domain. And I think this is where self-publishing has emerged from, and I think it would thrive from here. Naturally, self-publishing as well as traditional publishing would coexist. I mean, you're not saying that one market is going to replace the other. Everyone has to find a consumer. They'll find a way to find it, either through traditional channels of distribution or through the internet, whether selling their books directly online or selling it as in forms of ebooks. Yes, in certain genres, it's extremely important that the traditional publishing would take a larger role. I mean, academic publishing, where you have to go through a peer review system, or in science, technology, management kind of publishing, where self-publishing is difficult because you're not going to directly reach the consumer. The live role in the initial years, but fiction, non-fiction, and the entire languages domain in India, self-publishing as that of a traditional publisher.
Which brings me to, because I just want to get an idea of how it works in the non-English language, and what expectations do people have when they opt for self-publishing.
नमस्ते, मैं हिंदी में बात करूंगा. किसी को अगर समझने में दिक्कत हो तो लिनार्ड हेल्प करेंगे. खैर, सबसे पहले ये समझने की बात है कि सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग है क्या. सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग क्या ये है कि आप अपने पैसे लगाकर अपनी किताब खुद छापते हैं और उसके बाद आप उसको दोस्तों में बांटते हैं. क्या ये सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग है? सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग आप क्यों करते हैं? सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग क्या आप इसलिए करते हैं कि पब्लिशर के रिव्यू करने के, पब्लिशर उसको जज करे कि ये पब्लिश हो सकता है या नहीं, तब तक आप इंतज़ार नहीं कर सकते, या आप केवल सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग इसलिए करते हैं कि आप अपने दोस्तों को ये दिखा सकें कि आप लिखते हैं? मैं हिंदी का सेल्फ पब्लिशर हूँ. ऑलमोस्ट हमारे पास 70% टाइटल सेल्फ पब्लिश्ड हैं. हिंदी की हालत ये है कि हिंदी में ज़्यादातर सेल्फ पब्लिश पोएट्री कलेक्शन अपने पैसे लगाकर लोग पब्लिश करते हैं. जैसे कि अभी विवेक जी ने कहा कि बहुत सारे ऐसे हैं जो इसलिए अपने कवर डिसाइड करते हैं कि उनका नाती, उनका पोता कहता है कि ये दादाजी आपका कवर बहुत अच्छा है, मैं चाहता हूँ कि आपकी किताब पर हो. पब्लिशर की उस पर कोई राय नहीं ली जाती. ग्राफिक्स डिजाइनर तक की राय नहीं ली जाती. ग्राफिक्स डिजाइनर ये बोलता है कि ये सेंस नहीं बनता, ये अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है, फिर भी वो उसके लिए कहते हैं नहीं मैं पैसे दे रहा हूँ, मैं जैसा चाहता हूँ वैसा छपेगा. तो ये समझने वाली बात है कि आप क्यों पब्लिश होना चाहते हैं. क्यों, अगर आप पब्लिश इसीलिए होना चाहते हैं कि आप लोगों तक पहुँचे, तो सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग का फिलहाल जो सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग की रीजनल लैंग्वेज में हालत है वो सोल्यूशन आपको नहीं दे रहा है. वो इसलिए भी नहीं दे रहा है क्योंकि आप किसी पब्लिशिंग यूनिट की तरह काम नहीं कर रहे हैं। अगर आप पब्लिश कर रहे हैं तो बाज़ार में ढेर सारे पब्लिशर हैं जो असल में एक प्रिंटिंग प्रेस की तरह काम कर रहे हैं। आप उनके अपने अपने पैकेजेज हैं, आप असल में उनके लिए क्लाइंट हैं, उनका कोई और कस्टमर नहीं है, कोई ऐसा रीडर नहीं है जो उनका कस्टमर है, आप उनके कस्टमर हैं, उनके अपने पैकेजेज हैं जो आपसे पैसे लेकर उसके बदले में आपको कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री कॉपीज़ देते हैं और थोड़े बहुत वो अपने लाइब्रेरी या इंस्टीट्यूशनल जो खरीद है उस पर उनकी अपना बिजनेस चलता है। ये रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस की हालत है। एक दूसरी बात ये भी है कि रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस में अंग्रेजी की तरह, इंग्लिश की तरह सेल्फ पब्लिश होने का कोई भी सक्सेस स्टोरी नहीं है। कोई ऐसा वहाँ पे ऑथर अभी तक नहीं हुआ है मेरी जानकारी में जो कि अपने पैसे लगाकर या अपना एक प्रेस शुरू करके अपनी किताबें छापकर और एक बड़ा ऑथर बना हो या लोगों ने उसको पसंद किया हो। बहुत सारे लोगों का पर्पस सेल्फ पब्लिश होने का ये भी होता है कि वो असल में छपना तो उन्हीं बड़े पब्लिशर से चाहते हैं जो ट्रेडिशनल हैं, लेकिन वो रास्ता ये अख्तियार करते हैं। जैसे अभी शायद आपके लिए इन्होंने बोला कि पहले एक सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग कंपनी से आपकी किताब आई या पब्लिशर से, उसके बाद आपको वेस्टलैंड ने छापा। तो क्या आपकी असल में यूएसपी क्या है? क्या आप इसीलिए सेल्फ पब्लिश हो रहे थे क्योंकि आप चाहते थे वेस्टलैंड से छपना, या आपको अपने कंटेंट पे भरोसा था इसलिए आपने ऐसा किया? तो अगर आपको आपके कंटेंट पे भरोसा था तो आप पहले वेस्टलैंड के पास क्यों नहीं गए? और अगर अब वेस्टलैंड आपको छापना चाहता है तो आप उससे क्यों छपना चाहते हैं? हिंदी में बहुत सारे ऐसे ऑथर भी पब्लिशर बने जिनको पब्लिशर के जो उनका सिस्टम है उस पर यकीन नहीं है। उनको ऐसा लगता है कि पब्लिशर उनकी कॉपीज 20,000 में बेचता है और उसको रॉयल्टी 1,000 की देता है, 1,000 कॉपी की या कुछ कॉपीज की देता है। असल में वो बेचता ढेर सारा है। तो सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग कई तरीके से आया है हमारे रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस में कि बहुत सारे अच्छे लेखक भी सेल्फ पब्लिश करते हैं अपनी चीज़ों को, लेकिन वो सारे अनसक्सेसफुल स्टोरी हैं, इसलिए कि वो छाप तो लेते हैं लेकिन उसको बेचे कहाँ, उसको कंज्यूम जो करने वाला कस्टमर है उस तक वो पहुँचे क्यों, कैसे? तो अगर आप वो सारा सिस्टम खुद बनाते हैं तो असल में आप भी एक पब्लिशर हो जाते हैं ना। पब्लिशर के पास सारी चीज़ें होती हैं, पब्लिशर के पास एडिटर होता है, पब्लिशर के पास ग्राफिक डिजाइनर होता है, उसके पास सेल्स की टीम होती है, मार्केटिंग की टीम होती है, प्रमोशन की टीम होती है, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की टीम होती है। ये सारे जब आप खुद कर सकते हैं, ऐसे ही है जैसे कि कोई जब ब्लॉग आया तो ब्लॉग में ये था कि आप ही उसके एडिटर हैं, आप ही पब्लिशर हैं, आप ही हैं, फलां ढिका सब कुछ हैं, और आपने अपना एक ब्लॉग बना दिया और लोग कहने लगे आप अपने ब्लॉग से कमा भी सकते हैं। लेकिन असल बात ये है कि अभी भी उस ब्लॉग से कितने लोग कमाते हैं? वही लोग कमा पाए जिनके पास कंटेंट है। तो ये बात समझने वाली है कि चाहे पब्लिशिंग का कोई भी तरीका हो, सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग हो, मैं पब्लिश करूं, मनीष पब्लिश करें, विवेक करें या कनिष्क करें या ये लिनॉर्ड करें, असल में आपका कंटेंट रन करने वाला है। ये सारी चीज़ें सेकेंडरी हैं मेरे ख्याल से। जो अभी तक हमने समझा है कि हमने इतनी सारी चीज़ें सेल्फ पब्लिश करने के बाद हम लोग सोशल मीडिया का इस्तेमाल करके बहुत ज़्यादा उसको प्रमोट करने की भी कोशिश करते हैं, सारे ऑनलाइन पोर्टल पे हमारे टाइटल्स हैं, लेकिन वो काम नहीं करता, वो हमको सस्टेन करने लायक भी नहीं बना पाता सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग। बशर्ते कि हम कुछ ऐसा मॉडल करें कि हम पहले ही लेखक से इतने पैसे ले लें कि जिससे हमारा काम चलता रहे। तो ये कुछ ऐसे हर्डल्स हैं जिसको समझने की ज़रूरत है। कुछ और चीज़ें भी थीं जो कहनी थी। एक और भी चीज़ है जो मुख्य बात मैं कहना चाहता था यहाँ पर कि रीजनल लैंग्वेज में मैं ऐसा देखा हूँ, मनीष बोले कि इंग्लिश में शायद ऐसा नहीं है, कि जो लोग सेल्फ पब्लिश होते हैं वो हमेशा बैकफुट पे होते हैं। वो कभी पब्लिकली ये एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते विवेक जी की तरह कि हमने अपनी किताब को सेल्फ पब्लिश किया। वो तब एक्सेप्ट करते हैं जब वो सक्सेस हो जाते हैं। हिंदी में स्पेशली ऐसा है, कोई अगर जैसे हमारा ही ऑथर हमसे पैसे दे करके अपनी किताब पब्लिश करवाता है, वो कहता है हमारे कंटेंट में दम है, लेकिन क्या वो पब्लिकली अपने दोस्तों में, अपने जानने वालों में, किसी प्रोग्राम में ये एक्सेप्ट करता है कि मैंने अपने पैसे दे करके अपनी किताब छपवाई है और वो इसलिए छपवाई है क्योंकि मुझे इस पर यकीन है कि आने वाले समय में हिट होगा? और ये बहुत सारे पब्लिशर्स के साथ भी है कि वो भी एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते कि मैंने इस लेखक से पैसे लिए हैं। तो ये सब चीज़ें हैं, ये शायद रीजनल लैंग्वेज का अपना माइंड ब्लॉक है, हो सकता है इंग्लिश में ऐसा ना हो। इन्होंने बोला कि इंग्लिश में भी ऐसा कुछ है, तो ये भी एक है जो बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है जो सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग के रास्ते में आ रहा है। जब तक आप अपनी चीज़ों को सेलिब्रेट नहीं करेंगे, जब तक ये नहीं कहेंगे कि नहीं मैंने ये किया है, तब तक लोग आपको एक्सेप्ट नहीं करेंगे। थैंक यू।
Briefly, a translation of what he said. He said that it's important to understand why self-publishing is done. What is self-publishing? Is it self-funded publishing, or is it a business card to get better deals with traditional publishers or to show off to your friends. And in his experience, he's published many books, most of them poetry. About 70% of his titles are poetry. And he asks whether, and he says that it's important to know why you have self-published, because in Indian languages, at least, it's not yet means you cannot yet do it for self-promotion. There are no success stories to speak of, and if it is for self-promotion, if it is to imitate an Amish Tripathi, then that's not going to happen. And he knows of almost no success stories of people who have self-published. He says it's basically because the self-publisher is reduced to a printing service, and he does not have any customer base for the books that he has published. He gives the example of blog when he says that people think that just because they put up content on the blog, it's going to fly, but he reiterates that it's the content that's going to sell, not the other aspects of the blog. He invests in social media to promote his books, but it doesn't make much of a difference. And then finally he concludes by saying that at least in regional languages, authors are a bit different about confessing that they have self-published. And probably that's what doesn't allow them to succeed.
There is no option for content. There is no option for content. There is no alternative for content.
Okay. Yeah, then there is no alternative other than to put good content on that. I would like to bring Sitaraman now into the conversation and ask him from an author's perspective what made him go into self-publishing, and what were the choices that he made when he decided to do that.
Thank you, Leonard. I do agree with a couple of views expressed in this panel by different speakers. Starting with Mr. Vivek Mehra, he did mention that, certain level of gratification, okay? When you conceive a book and you think of writing, there is something within your system which you want to take out. So you want to write it down in a piece of, a bunch of papers, and then you want to you could preserve it for yourself, or you want, the world to read it. So there are different objectives and different motives for any author to write a book. I may be writing something about my family which I just want, my family and friends to read. And I may be, writing some poetry, which I want, to be on record in a more organized form instead of, simply writing it in a diary. And at some point of time, maybe offer to sell it, I may not decide to sell it immediately, but maybe later I might, want to sell it. So there could be different motives. So in that sense, I guess self-publishing definitely, helps a variety of authors, fulfill their objectives in some form or the other. So that's the first point. The second point I want to say is, there are questions raised as to why did you choose self-publishing and why didn't you not go for traditional publishing at first? Now, everything in life doesn't happen, in a planned manner, like somebody asked me, why did I join this particular MBA school? Come on, I didn't have a choice, so I had to join this, I did apply to, 4 other institutes, nobody gave me an admission. So I had to join this, so I joined this. So why did I go for self-publishing? It could be something like this. So I had a story, it was a fiction and I thought it was a good story, like any other things. And so I tried with many traditional publishers. It's not that I did not, I did try. And I got mixed responses, nobody was ready to accept it at that point of time. And it took me almost a year to actually find out that there is a concept of self-publishing. I didn't know. Okay, as an author, I was completely new to publishing industry. I didn't know that there is something called self-publishing which actually existed. Then when I came to know, I did certain research on it and I found, okay, this is a good thing to, do. So we should try it out. So that's when I researched on various self-publishing. Now, when you know that there is self-publishing, you research and you find there are plenty of options available. Now, there are people abroad who say, self-publishing can be done, there. And even in India at that time, I got to know of at least 4 or 5 different companies, which were doing. I chose Cinnamon Teal because I found their web content, very elaborate, and I was kind of impressed, and I had my initial conversations with them, so I went in with them, worked closely, and published. So that's how my book got self-published. So it was, I would not really say that it was planned, but in hindsight, now I feel that it happened for the good, because after I got the book self-published, I stumbled upon a challenge, because like Shailesh said, obviously you fund it yourself, most of the things, everything in fact. You get a lot of help, you get your book edited professionally, which is a great help, because you definitely need a feedback from someone else on what your book is all about, whether you've written it nicely, because we did go through this. We had certain discussions on cover design and